Hey folks, welcome Virtual Pilots. It's been a little while since we've done a stream, largely related to the 11 billion technical problems I've been having with Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I've promised myself I am not going to rant about that during this stream. It has generally been working okay throughout the course of today. I had been planning to do some VATSIM related stuff, but the avionics suite that I've been using suddenly stopped working today. I've been messaging backwards and forwards with the dev at Navigraph trying to get that updated and working. Then I use a thing called VATSIM radio, which is what allows me to see VATSIM information in VR, and then that suddenly stopped working this afternoon. So I'm afraid we have got a bog basic run-of-the-mill straightforward stream, albeit a redo of one that I think could be quite interesting. It's an IFR flight from Edinburgh, EGPH, down to Bristol, EGGD. We'll be flying this evening in the TBM850 from Black Square, so this is quite a high fidelity, dare I say, study level aircraft. We'll be doing some abbreviated checklists, but we'll be having a reasonable bash at them. Before we get into all of that, I do want to give a huge shout out to my very good friend Ben, who is currently having an extended second stay in hospital. Thoughts are with you, Ben. I'm sure they'll have you patched up and back with us soon. I think he's on stream watching, so thoughts are with you and Layla. I thought we could do a little bit of planning in SimBrief. We've not done that before. I do use SimBrief to prepare all of my flights, so we won't be doing the entire thing from scratch. I've kind of pre-populated some of it, but SimBrief, for those that aren't familiar with it, is a tool for planning predominantly IFR flights. It's owned now by Navigraph and pretty well integrated into the Navigraph suite of various tools, etc. I'm fairly certain that Navigraph bought it, though. I don't believe that they developed it. So it's a system that, like all things with Flight Simulator, takes a little bit of research to get your head round. We will be flying this evening in Golf Bravo Oscar Mike Sierra, which is in the real world certainly not a TBM850. It's a little Cessna 172 that I've flown a number of times from a local flight school, but it's a call sign that I can remember quite well, so that's what we've decided to go with. Now, the flight today, I will be using real weather that is current at this point in time. But a stream where I do nothing but sort of fly into the abyss is not very interesting. So whilst the weather will be real time and current, and that's helpful because this flight planning software will account for things like that, the time of day will actually be during the day so that you can see more than just a cockpit and a black void and me flying on into it. So most of this is all pre-populated, so departure Echo Golf Papa Hotel down to Bristol, Echo Golf Golf Delta. Our alternative, Echo Golf Lima Lima, relatively famous airport. TBM 850 from Black Square. Whole load of there's a profile that you download into SimBrief effectively that gives you things like performance characteristics, climb and descent rates, etc. So it makes all of that relatively straightforward. You do need to be using latest navigation data from in fact you don't need to use the latest navigation data. If you're flying on VATSIM, you need to be flying with the latest navigation data, which we will be this evening. So we're using the ARC cycle 2402, that being 2024-02, so that being February to March. And a whole heap of information about weight, etc. Now, because I use VATSIM, I do tend to make sure that these routes are correct using the something called the standing routing document, which is available from NAT. I've gone in and checked all of that already, so rather than bore you with all of that, it's all pre-populated. So we will generate our flight. There we go, saying payload is limited by the 0 takeoff weight. That's all good. Now I need to download that latest flight plan using the latest TDS Pro version, TDS850 NXI, which we will be talking about. Very cool. They finally got round to adding the most requested feature, that being updated Navigraph. Of course they've used Navigraph, but updated navigation data, so that's fabulous. But yeah, we're pretty well there, I think. So I think that is enough preamble from me. We need to go and get in the cockpit and get this flight on the road. Just checking you can hear me. Yep, that looks good. Okay. So, just need to get the aircraft set up. It's going to stutter whilst my Bluetooth keyboard just connects. So we're in a full cold and dark state here. We will be doing the full setup from scratch, pulling our navigation data in, etc. We'll be looking at the weather information. Okay, so for some reason with the TBM, it doesn't want to put you in a sort of very natural position for sitting in the cockpit. I always think that's a little bit of a miss when developers do that. I'm hoping through the power of magic that we're going to be able to get chat in this evening. That's looking like it might work. Maybe Big Scary Mara moderator could type something so that I can check that that's actually updating. That would be very handy. And we've got tablet as well. Not sure if let's see if I can type something. Oh, there we go. It is updating. Fabulous. Great. We've got chat. That's awesome. That's a step in the right direction. Okay, so we will get our avionics on. Just pull ourselves just a smidge further forward than that. That's a bit better. And get our flight plan imported. Looking good. That's our flight plan all done. Get the Navigraph stuff up as well. Beauty of Edinburgh is it doesn't have a whole load of departures. Let's just bring up the weather information, see which runway we're departing from. Bring the meter up. So wind is at 2,000 knots. We're definitely not going to be doing that. So we'll be taking off from runway 24. Get that meter information just over there. And that one, no. Seems absolutely determined to go runway 6, and I know that we want. I don't know why it keeps defaulting everything so small. Make that a bit bigger. There we go. Runway 24. And our departure will be Gotham 1C. Perfect, right. So let's select that procedure. So departure is going to be the Gotham 1C. Load that departure and preview it. Okay, that's looking good. Very good, right. Let's get a checklist for starting the aircraft up. Okay, we're definitely going to do a slightly abbreviated checklist today. Okay, let's get our pushback sorted. Interesting, I appear to have lost my mouse. And fascinating. That is not very helpful. Right, we're going to have to come out of VR and go back in. This has largely been my experience most of the day, folks. We're just trying to get things to work. A bit aggravating. I think it's becoming increasingly clear. Where has that mouse gone? That is super aggravating. Right, there's my mouse. Okay. In VR. Ah, there we go. Not at all sure what happened there. I think it's that big arrow in front of you. Yeah. You could see it on the screen, but I couldn't see it in VR. So, meter. Do like technical problems whilst we're live streaming. Always good fun. What on earth is going on with this? Right. It's all marvellous when it works, folks. Oh, somehow we're magically moving back without our dude. Oh, no, he's caught up. It's alright. Dennis has caught us up. There we go. Good stuff. Okay, let's get our engine started. Right, crash bar is up. Avionics on. Landing gear is down. Battery is on battery. Generator main. Nav lights coming on. Oxygen coming on and checking pressure. Pressure's looking good. Horn test. Horn is working. ITT test. Yeah, ITT gauge is working. Interior lights as required. Check fuel quantity. We're going to cheat. I need more fuel than that. Not a lot, but a little bit. There we go. Thereabouts. Flaps are up. Right. Batteries looking good. We're discharging at the moment because we've also not got the engine running. Right. Boost pump is on. Strobe lights on. Nav lights on. Oh. Propeller area is clear. High RPM. And going to the starter, we're waiting for NG to get to 13%. That's 10, 13. We're going low idle. Keeping an eye on the ITT temperature. Waiting for NG to get to 50%. There we are, 50%. Starter's coming off. And we're high idle, still keeping an eye on the temperature, but that temperature is now coming down. Jolly good. Okay, starter off. We want fuel pump on auto. We want fuel selector on auto. We want to make sure that the fuel tank's switching, which it is. So we'll take the strobe off. We want all the gyros on. See all of the equipment coming on. This horizon indicator there, the way that starts up is a seriously cool part of this aircraft. Like that a lot. So EFIS master on. Making sure that it's slaved and slaved to the left, which it is. AP trim master on. Make sure the trim is working. It is. And we want our bleed air on auto. Fan on. Set our temperature. Making sure that arrow's pointing up. With the radar on standby. Looking good. Transponders we don't particularly need to worry about, but let's put in some random code T2356 for, because why not? What's QNH? QNH 1007. And if we look at the Gotham 1C departure, that first waypoint we need to be above 23,000 feet, below 6,000. Essentially, for all of these, you can be at 6,000. This aircraft has got good enough climb performance that we can just go to 6,000. We'll arm that, and we'll set an initial climb of 1,500 feet. That's looking good. Back to our checklist. Sort of skipping over a little bit of this. We're taxiing. We're going runway 24. Okay, let's get ourselves on the road, as it were. Should not be getting stuttering there. Let's put that better. Find this window that brings the chat in. Seems to have a very, very, very disproportionate impact on my frame rate in sim, much more so than all this avionics stuff and Navigraph and stuff like that. But yeah, that is noticeably stuttering compared to when I was flying the sim earlier. And I do find it's always with that window with the chat in, but we'll keep it going. Start messing around with stuff now, we'll be here forever. It's the other thing I've been seeing a lot of today. Apparently me losing connection constantly, and that doesn't make a whole heap of sense. I did, just before I came on stream, watch a video from another YouTuber who was having, I wouldn't say rant, that would probably be a bit extreme, but by all accounts the guy had not been able to use the sim. Wasn't sure whether he was on the official release or whether he was on a beta version, but had been having problems. Had effectively reinstalled the whole thing, had spent several days trying to do this, had got it all up and working. Microsoft put an update out and the thing didn't work again. And to say he was frustrated was probably the understatement of the century. That has kind of been my experience with this sim for the last couple of months, actually. It's been okay most of today, so it will be the law of the sod that, of course, now that I'm trying to stream, it won't work. Just going to get rid of the chat temporarily and just see if that... Yeah. That is immediately better. I will find ways of checking the chat, but that's just really impacting the performance of the sim. That's actually pretty silky smooth now. Let's get our autopilot set up. Going to be nav and altitude. Set to GPS. It's a shame that I've not managed to get that sim working today. Quite a bit more interesting as you're taxiing along here and you've got other aircraft in for real. You can hear all the chatter going on over the radio. That's pretty cool. Okay, checking left, checking right, clear. We're going to use a transition level of 7,500 feet to go to our standard QNH 29902 inches of mercury, 1013 hectopascals. Use the local QNH until you go past that transition altitude, and once you're over that, everybody defaults back to the standard 29902. And we'll forgo the run-up today, albeit I did have a failure in the TBM earlier on. You get sort of these standard failures that just sort of generate over time, and the steam gauge sort of HSI on the left-hand side just wasn't working, and then on the, if you go into the correct part of the menu system for the weather radar, it did show that as a failure. That's the first failure that I've had. So we've flown it sufficiently in order to have a failure. Right, let's get our checklist. Yes, battery is charging. Okay. So landing lights on, strobe light on, weather radar is test and then on. Feel like I've forgotten something. What have I forgotten? Windshield heat. Pitot heat is on. We're going 6,000 feet initially. We've got our autopilot set, I think. 1 notch of flaps. I think we're good to go. We'll track our departure here on Navigraph. I think we're good. Let's go. A fair whack of wind. Like a lot of right rudder in to keep it on the centre line. Okay, takeoff power is set. Airspeed is alive. Rotate. Lots of right rudder. Vertical speed gear is coming up. And flaps are coming up. Putting some trim in to keep the nose up. Ourselves to 1,500 feet. Autopilot's on. Yaw dampeners on. And we're looking good. Nice. Okay. Probably get that taxi light off. T's and P's are all in the green. So we've got to be above 2,300 feet before we hit that first waypoint, but we're actually already at 2,100, so we're easily going to make that. Great thing about this aircraft, so we're currently at 100% torque on the engine. This flap lever, if you see, it's got an 850 written above it, and now you're about to learn where the TBM850 gets its name from. Flip that up into 850 mode. Watch this torque here starting to creep up. You can actually go to a 120% torque. for a propeller aircraft, albeit a turboprop propeller aircraft. She has got some grunt on her, and we can actually go up to 2,000 feet climb. Keeping that torque at 120, so yeah, we're doing 180 knots, climbing at 2,000 feet per minute. This aircraft is no slouch whatsoever. That's 5,000. We're already above the minimum altitude for our next waypoint. Coming up on 6,000. Aircraft's captured it, automatically leveling off. That's looking great. Let's see if we can bring our chat back in. And Ben apparently can't abuse me if the chat's not available to him. They call that a carpet. Are those seats even? Not a patch on the Piper. The Piper does have much better carpet, there's no doubt of that. No doubt of that. But that window's affected my frame rate again. Oh goodness. It does go all the way up to 11, Ben, it does indeed. All of the best things do. But I think what I'm going to do is sort of periodically bring the chat in, check it, and then probably get... Yeah, that's not a very optimized tool, is it? That needs some work. Okay. So once we're past this Gossam waypoint, we can go to our climb altitude of 2,300 feet. It is a turboprop aircraft, but eventually, so normally with like a non-turbo based aircraft, as you climb, the air pressure gets lower, you have to keep pushing more and more and more manifold pressure in. Generally don't have to do that for turbo equipped aircraft until they exceed the, I think, what is called the critical altitude. That critical altitude is slightly different depending on which aircraft you're in, but there comes a point that the turbocharger still can't compress air to the same level it would be at sea level. So even with this turboprop aircraft, there comes a point at which you have to keep pushing the throttle in and in and in order to maintain the same thrust. But yeah, that's all looking good. And before anybody starts making any sarcastic remarks and see me drinking, I've had comments before of, are you drinking the wine straight from the bottle, Michael? No, this is cider. It's a cider bottle. Granted, a rather large one, but I am not quite so bad that I'm just drinking wine straight from the bottle. We're going to come up on Mavics. That's... We're going to start our turn to the left to Gossam. But yeah, given that as you're flying the departures, typically, no matter what aircraft you're in, you could be in a 737, you're restricted to less than 250 knots indicated airspeed. We are doing 230 knots indicated airspeed as a propeller-based aircraft, so this really is no slouch at all. We'll get ourselves up in the climb, and then I'll explain just a couple of the things that I'm using that are a little bit different on the in the sim today. That most notably being the avionics that I'm using, and I've got quite a funky tool that goes in and adjusts level of detail in order to maintain particular frame rates, actually, which I have to say I've been pretty impressed with. That, coupled with the eye-tracked foveated rendering that I've got on the Varo Aero headset, with the exception of when I've got the a YouTube chat window in here, very happy with the performance actually of the sim when it's not crashing. And there's been a fair bit of that. Right, that's Gossam. So let's get ourselves up to 2,300 feet. It's on that. Why will that not arm? That does not want to arm, does it? Let's try that again. Might have to do it manually. That's fine. And that does not want to arm. Not seen it do that before. Well, if there weren't a load of quirks to deal with, it wouldn't be fun, would it? Good stuff. Right, okay, let's spend just a little bit of time talking about the TDS 750 NXI. For those who aren't aware, the Garmin 750 NXI is this piece of kit in the middle here that provides the avionics and the GPS, access to approach plates, departure plates, etc. So that's a real unit. It exists in the real world. It's hugely expensive thing to buy. Many of you will be familiar with, like, say, the Garmin G1000, which is the full glass cockpit. This is kind of like the baby brother of it, but sort of better in some respects, that it is equipped with a touchscreen, etc. I've forgotten to get the air pressurization going, so just get that going. And I think lower our descent just a smidge as well. So yes, there's a real world unit. There are 2 software versions available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. There is one made by a company called PMS, and there is a company called TDS who make one as well. Now there's some important differences between the two. The TDS one makes use of the actual official Garmin software trainer. The trainer is designed for people who are unfamiliar with the 750 NXI, in order to go on a laptop, a tablet, or whatever, be able to push the buttons and learn how to use it. It, for all effects and purposes, uses the actual software that runs the real world Garmin, so it looks and behaves exactly the same as the real thing. The PMS one is one that they've built from the ground up. Now the TDS one has always, in my opinion, performed a little bit better than the PMS one. It performed better in as much that the autopilot is smoother, it zooms the map in and out of its own accord, it smooths the flight plan out quite nicely. You can see here that there's a dotted line coming off the aircraft. That is working out based on our altitude, how far we could glide and which airport we might be able to get to. So that at the moment saying we could get to Echo Golf Papa Kilo. PMS one doesn't do any of that stuff, but the PMS one was nice because it had Navigraph integration. You could get up-to-date plates on there, and most importantly, the single biggest difference between the two is that with the PMS one you could get the most up-to-date ARC map navigation information. So if you're flying on VATSIM and you need access to that stuff, kind of was a no-brainer choice actually. The PMS was the way to go, and that was always frustrating because I'd used both. I'd certainly used the TDS version and preferred it as a unit, but was kind of required to use the PMS one. Well, TDS re-released for all effects and purposes their version. They've called it a Pro version, and this Pro version now includes access to Navigraph charts and the latest Navigraph IRAC information. So it came out just over a week ago. It's absolutely fabulous. I feel like I've got the best of both worlds now in them. The PMS still has things like you can check to see what VATSIM controllers might be online, etc. But I think I've been quite pleased actually with the performance of this new TDS unit. So if you already had the TDS unit, you have to pay something like, I think, $25 extra on their website in order to get access to these pro features. It's $70 if you've not bought it at all. Definitely worth checking out. Just go into Google, just Google TDS 750 NXI, and it will bring the website straight up. But yeah, it really is a very nice unit. The touchscreen stuff in VR is fabulous. I suspect actually slightly easier to use in VR than perhaps in the real world. If you've ever tried using a touchscreen like in your car, etc., when you're driving, actually as your hand is juggling around, it's quite difficult to get it in the right place to push the buttons where you want them to be. I can promise you the same is true in aircraft. So that's why people like the G1000, where you've got kind of like the solid rotary buttons. When you're flying in the sim and you're flying in VR, it's much easier to do if you've got a mouse and you can just kind of click on stuff. In the real world, maybe the rotary buttons are a bit easier to do. But that's new bit of kit. They actually had some problems. They put an update out yesterday, and they caused some problems with the database. I have to give a big kudos to the Navigraph developer and the TDS developers who've worked over the weekend to get that sorted out. And as you can see, as of now, it's working absolutely fine with the latest ARC information. So yeah, that's the TDS GTN 750 NXI. Fabulous bit of kit. It's not inexpensive. Granted, the Pro, the older version, which I think was about $50, they have discontinued. So not inexpensive. You could buy yourself a couple of aircraft for that amount of money, granted. But if you do a lot of flying in aircraft such as this unit will work in all the black square steam gauge replacements for stock aircraft. It will work in things like the Pilatus PC-12, both from SWS and the original one that was released a little while ago. It will work in the Piper that Ben was referring to, that he's a little obsessed with. So really fabulous, versatile unit. I've barely scratched the surface of all the aircraft that you can use it in. Actually, it really is a fabulous bit of kit. So we're just coming up on 20,500 feet, and we've got an indicated airspeed of 180 knots, a track ground speed of 251 knots, and we are still climbing at 1,000 feet. We're starting to level out in terms of cabin pressurization, etc. So yeah, it's all looking pretty dandy. We probably should do our cruise checklist. Yeah, flaps up, you'll get damper, yeah. Pressurization's done. Cruise power set, de-ice. We've got the windscreen ice on, we've got the pitot tube ice on. Okay, maybe that has armed. That's that yellow light coming on is sort of indicating that it will level off. It'll be interesting to see if it does that. That's 22,500. Now this video being a redo, of course, because it crashed the last time we did it because of all of the aforementioned problems I had. That is not leveling off. Yeah, that did not arm. That's fine. We'll do it manually. Not sure that might have been something I've done. You're all sitting there going, yes, Michael, as you skipped through the checklist, you missed such and such very important thing. Well, possibly. There we go. There or thereabouts. So, cruise checklist's all done. We're going to cruise along at putting more power in because the air pressure has dropped. So we're going to keep that at 120% torque, and that will give us at 25,000 feet, there or thereabouts, 120% torque, 215 feet indicated airspeed, which we're pretty close to, 315 knots tracked airspeed. We're not quite close to that, but of course the wind will account for some of that as well, but we are well on our way. So flying quite a fair whack of the country today, all the way from Edinburgh down to Bristol, not an insignificant distance. Nice. Right, we're going to be doing an ILS in what I suspect will be runway 27 this evening, so let's get that dialed in there. Ready? Does look very, very, very cool. All that funky cloud cover. Very difficult to go back to a flat desktop view of this once you've been flying in VR. Okay. Still giving you that glide speeds constantly, just sort of latching on. So if we were to have an engine failure now, effectively what that's saying is there is sufficient altitude and speed in the aircraft at its optimum glide angle, non-powered glide angle, for us to be able to make what's that, Echo Golf November Charlie. Yes, very good. The other thing that I'm using today, which I might just be able to bring up for you for a second, is, see if you can see that on your screen. I believe you can. Yes, you can. So this is a very cool tool. It works both in VR and on flat screen. It's a thing called Smooth Flight. There have been a couple of these sorts of tools that have appeared over the last couple of weeks. So essentially Zobo now giving access to memory locations where things like terrain level of detail, object level of detail, etc. are stored in, and allowing these tools to make changes. So essentially what this allows you to do is set an FPS range, etc., that you want the sim to try and achieve, and then effectively what you do is set some limits in here for terrain level of detail and object level of detail, and essentially what it's doing is adjusting those things in real time. So as your frames are dropping down, it will drop the detail level and allow those frames to catch up. As you get into areas that are less demanding, the sim doesn't need to work as hard, it will start cranking them up. It's also got a landing mode, so as you get to, you know, say 30 feet or whatever, it's going to crank that object level of detail and terrain level of detail right down really, really low. It's got a taxi mode, and that's great, right? So the best way to think about particularly the terrain level of detail is it's kind of like draw distance, so the distance at which it's drawing stuff. If you're taxiing around, you don't need a particularly long draw distance. You can't see those things anyway because you're on the ground and you're taxiing, but your GPU and your system are having to do work to render and predict those things in the background, and that is having an FPS impact. So this is sort of technology that have been used in consoles, on Xbox in particular, and in fact I think Microsoft Flight Simulator does something like this on the Xbox. So it's a shame that we've not really had that for the PC, but these tools have swooped in, and I think broadly, once you've got them tuned in, my best summary of it actually would be is, once you've got it tuned in well, you don't really even notice that it's changing those parameters. You don't notice that the draw distance isn't as good or the level of detail isn't quite as good, but you certainly do notice that you've got improved performance on the sim, and that the frames are significantly improved. So I've been very impressed. I've played around with a couple of them. There's another one, its name escapes me, that will actually adjust the cloud level of detail. I did notice some of the changes that were being made on that tool. I found this one to be a little more subtle. Maybe that's because I've got more used to it and I've done some tuning, I don't know. But they are most definitely worth a look. It's nice and clear here up at 23,000 feet now that we've got ourselves above the cloud cover. Nothing on the weather radar, no failures that we've got going on, no active failures, no. It's been a fairly uneventful flight thus far. Half contemplating coming out of VR, but I suspect the second that I do that the sim will crash, as it is the law of the sod. And it won't actually be that long before we have to start planning our descent. This handy tablet, this all-in-one tablet, actually has a handy descent calculator here. I know that I want to be at 16,000 feet in order to start the standard terminal arrival for Bristol. And what is sort of simultaneously helpful about this tool is also the thing that's equally frustrating. It's designed for VR so that you don't have to type numbers in, which is helpful, but that you do spend 17 years clicking plus and minus arrows to get everything tuned in. But essentially you're putting your cruise altitude in, you're saying I want to be at 16,000 feet, speed above 10,000 feet will be that, let's say it will be 250 below 10,000 feet, and then we calculate. You need more info? Yes, we need to tell it how quickly we're going to descend. Click, 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 click. So we were going to say come down at, oh, I want to say 1,000 feet because I don't want to click anymore, but that's not the right answer. I suspect we're going to come down at 1,500 feet per minute. Right, we want to be 26 miles out. 26 miles out, that will be our top of descent. Arrival at Bristol, see? Flight level 160, that's 16,000 feet. That's a Webby. And if actually we come over here and look at our flight plan, and we find Webby, you can see from the waypoint before it is 19.6. We wanted about 25. So it's when we get to sort of Lusker, something like that, which is here, essentially. One of the great features of Navigraph being able to overlay stuff like that. So we're showing 220. Oh, we are over torqued. That won't have done the engine any good. See if that's still saying engine condition 1000%. Not entirely sure how that's managed to happen. I don't think it had been like it for long. Winds at 250 degrees at Bristol, so it's going to be a runway 27 approach. Let's just doubly correlate that with the meter in sim. Be too far away at the moment. Yeah, I mean, it's a long distance. So it really is the length of the country, but we've done quite a fair bit of it already. We're just there. Just there. We started up there, and we've got there to go. So not going to be long before we start our descent. We're definitely further through this flight than we got the last time we tried this. I got a right old fidget on this evening. I can't sit still. In terms of some personal news, I may well be moving house in several months. We've been having a conversation with a property developer building a series of houses not very far from us, actually, only about 5 minutes around the corner. We managed to convince them to do part exchange on the house that we're in. The house that we were in, the house that we're in was brand new, and actually we bought that off of plan. It was a muddy field when we came to look at it. Doing the same thing with this new house, but just struggling a little bit for space, as circumstances have changed quite a bit since we moved into this house. So I've changed company, changed job. I've changed job a couple of times, actually, working in IT, for those of you that don't know. Do a sort of interesting culmination of product management, if you're familiar with that, but do it in a sort of platform engineering and infrastructure space. So do lots of work with like Kubernetes, container orchestration and stuff like that, but from a product perspective. When I left my previous organization, I went contracting for a while. I contracted as essentially a sort of senior engineer sort of / architecture role, but I found myself now back in the product space. But yeah, new company, pays better, which is nice. Wife's gone back to work. She wasn't working during the pandemic, actually, so yeah, life is sort of bonkers and busy, but can't really complain. Things are pretty good, actually, for us. So that's a little bit exciting. I will confirm, though, moving house was being just about the single most stressful thing that you can do. My entire life seemed to sort of exist of working, reading documents, getting things prepared, etc. But yeah, I can't and shouldn't complain too much. But that's exciting. I might put some pictures. We got a whole heap of pictures from the developer this weekend, actually, where the house is. It was essentially a lump of it was a concrete slab on the ground. There is actually brick on top of this concrete slab and some scaffolding going up around it now as well, so that's super exciting. The great news for this channel in all of that is I'm going to end up with a dedicated YouTube studio, as opposed to sort of this little room sort of at the end of another room that I use here, with people coming and going constantly, and I've sort of been a bit space constrained. And you may have spotted us that I've been doing a bit of sort of DCS and stuff. That's a sort of complete pain, because every time I want to do DCS I have to half dismantle my cockpit, put the F-18 stuff, which you might be able to see is on the floor next to me here, get that all set up, and then when I want to go back to Microsoft Flight Simulator, essentially sort of reset all that up again. This is basically going to allow me to have 2 sim pits, and yeah, the sort of the moving house, whole heap of family stuff, etc. going on, probably for like the last 4 months or so. It's just made making content difficult to do. I really do enjoy making content, as anyone who knows me will attest. I do get quite frustrated when I feel like I can't make content, but it is, for all effects and purposes, a hobby rather than my main source of living. I do actually have a normal job. Just remembered actually this tablet's got a way of getting the METAR information. Yeah, winds 250 at 6 knots. That's cool. Runway 27. That is my favourite route in. Top of descent calculator saying 25.2 miles. 25.2 miles. Yeah, so Lux is about where I'm going to want to start at, maybe a little bit before. I'll hoop maybe. I think we might start a little bit earlier than that and then maybe descend at a little more gentle rate, maybe come down at 700 feet per minute rather than the 1,000. Keep our speed under control. We don't want to pick up crazy speed. I think when we get to Knockin, we'll start descending down. But look at that. I have a love-hate relationship with this sim, ladies and gents. I love it because it is epic when it works. Majorly frustrating when it doesn't. Largely because it is so epic when it does work. Okay, so we're coming up on Knockin now. About 8 miles away. Still can't get that to arm in the way that I would like. That's fine, we can work around it. Let's get our heading bug up the top, and I'm certain that we're going to want to start using that. Right, beginning our turn, so let's start ourselves coming down 700 feet, and let's ease back. Take ourselves back to 100% torque. Remembering, of course, that as we descend, Air pressure is going to build. As the air pressure builds, we're going to have to keep that coming back more and more. Let's do our descent checklist. So ECS pressurization, we want back at there. I think I am going to bring us down a smidge faster than that. Landing lights on, below 10,000 feet, fuel's looking fine, we got plenty of fuel still. Oxygen pressure's looking good. You can see that our cabin pressure is descending, we are descending, and therefore the differential between the two is staying largely the same. Let's make sure we've got right arrival in. Let's do load procedure. Arrival is F key 1B. Load arrival. And approach is going to be ILS 27. GPS guidance only, because of course an ILS approach cannot be flown under GPS. That would be an RNAV approach. Yeah, that's looking fab. Probably did do that a little bit sooner than we needed to, but hey ho, what do you know? We are nearly at the point that we're coming up on our plate. So we're going to want to be flight level 160 for WebB, flight level 150, and then actually relatively sharp drop before we get to the Bristol NDB. We want to be flight level 070. Oh, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoops. That's because it's still not arming. Ah, dearie me, that's terrible. I have to go do some reading in the manual, try and work out what I've done there. See if I can get, if I flip the autopilot off, maybe we can get it to... There we go, that's working now. The cloud seems to be clearing a bit. doing the same thing again. Wonder if it's trying to get its altitude information off of the Garmin. That is entirely possible. Because this has had some problems over the weekend. I was using the PMS version, and there are some differences. Right. $220 knots. Maximum speed in the hold. A little below that at the moment. Coming on Webby. 4 nautical miles out. That will not take us long to get through that. Getting ourselves ready to get into the hold. Looking good, looking good. Alright, next drop is a little bit more dramatic. Q&H. It's 1014. Let's see if it's changed. 1014 hectopascals. Cool. Okay, let's get ourselves dropping down. Descending to 7,000 feet as we cross 7,500. We go to the local Q&H. Not really all that different from the QNH we've got dialed in. Yeah, we're well on the descent now. All looking good. That's set to 7,000. Well, bring that back. I think we're going to come out of 850 mode. Don't need all that speed now. We'll want to start putting the flaps in, and we will expedite that descent. Coming down at 2,000 feet. You can see the 7 crossing just over there. You may have noticed on quite a lot of my streams I often fly in or out of Bristol. I lived in Bristol for many, many years. Lovely city. That is the second and the 7 crossing. You can see actually there's moments like that in this sim that are just epically cool. We're on the Wales side here. Land of sheep. Okay, passing 9,000. Get that local QNH dialed in. (1014 hectopascals). Start slowing our descent. That in good time. Maximum speed in the hold is 220 knots. We've got the heading for the hold already dialed into the heading bug. Coming up on 7,000. Still 12 miles to go. Right, I think what we will do is continue our descent down to 3,000. There's no other aircraft around us. Excuse me. One more quick slurp of cider. Let's get our landing lights coming on. We'll get that approach activated. Actually, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to our Edinburgh, which I think should mean I can activate that. Coming up on 3,000 feet. And we're going to be coming in 103 degrees as we cross over Brie. Okay, that's looking good. So let's get 103 degrees dialed in here. And we want to be descending down to 2,500. And we want to be losing speed. Okay. I want to come about 8 miles out. It's looking good. We've got a DME information here. That's all looking good. About 6 miles out. Glide slopes above us, which is where we want it to be. Coming up on the 8 miles, so we will begin our teardrop approach in. just overshoot that, but no, I think we've got it in. That's looking okay. It's interesting, it's cranked the level of detail right down, but I mean, like, to the extent that it doesn't look fabulous anymore. So we have got our approach in. I can actually, I think, see the runway in front of me. I can. Let's do our descent checklist. Initial approach, altimeters, yeah, full RPM, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we're looking good. Okay, I can see the glide slope coming in, so landing gear is coming down, first notch of flaps is going in. Got 3 greens, gear is down, and we're coming in on the glide slope. Visibility of the runway in front of me. Need to get our airspeed into the white arc so we can get that second notch of flaps in. I think we're going to get the autopilot off now. Definitely feel that wind coming in. Get trim in. Get the aircraft stabilized. So we're in the white arc. Don't want that notch of flaps in just yet. So wind's coming from 250. So ever so slightly from the left, but largely down the runway. So we want slight crab. It was 9 knots. We're getting a little bit high, so taking the power out, let the nose drop. And that wind is sort of deceptively strong, actually. And chase after that glide slope. We've let ourselves get a bit high. That's it, it's coming back in. That's it, we've caught it back up. A little bit to the left, that wind blowing us off just a smidge. There we go, glide slopes coming back in. It's looking good. Power, we're getting slow. We get that final notch of flaps in. The nose is pitching up, so compensate for that. I'm going to get too slow. Nice big runway here at Bristol. There you go, that's the glide slope coming back in. So we're hand flying at this point, getting a little bit of trim, power going in, we're getting too slow. Oof, she's windier than I would have initially thought. That's okay, that's okay. 500 feet. Stabilised, continue. There's decision altitude. We continue, stabilised. Right, rudder and roll into the wind. That's it. Idle. Nice. A bit long. Oh, that was nice, gentle touchdown though. I'll have that. Definitely went long. But it was a nice, gentle touchdown. Oh, we've missed that. Really should have come off there, but braking. Not a massively busy airport, Bristol, actually, and they actually have quite a lot of light general aviation aircraft. So Ben, who is penchant for single-propped complex aircraft like the Piper, you actually get quite a contingent of Piper and Cessnas going in to Bristol. Bit of stuttering as the simulator keeps losing and regaining connectivity. Alright, landing lights coming off, taxi lights on, strobe light off. Let's get that weather radar off before we zap everybody, and then it was deceptive. That windsock, it's not moving very much, but it was deceptive. That wind was stronger than I anticipated. One of the great features of the Pro version of the GTN, you'll see it's automatically brought the airport diagram up. Which is nice to see. And welcome to Bristol. Won't take this turning, we'll take the next one. Beauty of Bristol, if you've ever flown out, is you can get to quite a wide variety of destinations, but it's not such a massive airport that it's like when you drive into Heathrow, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it, to find your way around, etc. Bristol's not too bad, actually. Just one big main car park out the front. So, stuttering as it's gaining and losing connection is very annoying. It's a problem the sim has had for ages. So checking right, checking left, clear, crossing the runway, bringing ourselves over to the general aviation parking. Right, shutdown parking brake is on, taxi lights coming off. Bring the bleed off, switch that off, and that off. EP trim master is off. Power lever for 2 minutes flight idle. We're not going to do that. Going to feather. 15 seconds. And go and cut off. Auxiliary boost pump going off. Fuel selector to manual. Fuel tank selector to off. Exterior lights all off. Generator off. Source off. Crash bar down. There we go, folks. There we go. It's been good to be back. Ben saying he gets horrendous motion sick in some VR games. Essentially anything with smooth motion. Yeah. But as soon as you put a cockpit around me, as in a plane or some degree of car, that problem disappears. I don't think that that's uncommon. I've read that quite a few places, Ben. And thank you. Yes, any landing that you can walk away from is a good one, folks. It's been ages since we've done a live stream. I've got terrible VR hair. It's a smidge over 10 o'clock in the evening here in the UK on a Sunday night. I've got work tomorrow, so we are going to call it a day there. As always, I hope you're very well wherever in the world you are. Stay safe in the skies, and I will see you in my next one.